FM News Talk 97.1.
On-demand audio.
Well, we've seen Right to Work and the battle for employee free choice in Wisconsin. We've seen it in Indiana. And we've seen it this week in Michigan. So 24 states, that's one state away from half of the country being right to work. Who is next? Joining me on the phone right now is Missouri's Speaker of the House, Tim Jones. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Dana. It's great to be with you.
It's good to speak with you. And, of course, the big question is now, what will happen with Missouri and right to work? We have Republican supermajorities. So even if Governor Nixon, decided to veto it, we could still override him. What is right to work something that you think is going to come up in Missouri soon?
Dana, I think it will. I support, let me just go on record by saying, and I've gone on record previously on this, I support right to work. I came out a couple of years ago in support of it. I actually had Mark Mix, the leader of the National Right to Work Defense Fund, come into the state twice over the last 2 years to speak to legislators and talk to them about what you exactly just said, worker economic freedom. Unfortunately, there's a couple political realities I just want to highlight so the listeners understand where we are. We could probably pass right to work in the House, but our Senate has the filibuster power, and they frequently do not use the nuclear option of calling the question. They've only done it once in the 6 years I've been there. So we'd face a Senate filibuster on it. The governor would veto the bill if it did get to him, and an override would be nearly impossible. I lose a few members on these labor reform issues. It's hard to persuade them, about 5 or 6 members into doing that. However, there's an alternative. It is a key component of eventually getting to a right-to-work state. It's in the Michigan bill. It's called paycheck protection. It cuts off the money supply by saying to rank-and-file union members, do you want to have a checkbox on your union dues stub that says, I do not want my dues going to support political purposes that I do not. And you know that money, it's the root of politics and the root of political power, and it's the root of the union's power. I think right to work, we're probably several years away from that. We need to get a Republican governor first, but paycheck protection is something I'm going to move in the House this year.
Well, that's well, with paycheck protection, does it still give workers the choice as to whether or not they want to join a union, or this is just? I mean, this is basic. It's not really right to work, but it's sort of a step in that direction. It just gives them the option of deciding where their dues go.
Yes, it's a step in the direction. It was one of the key components of the Michigan bill that was just passed. I actually happen to know the Michigan Speaker, Jace Bolger, really well. I really admire him for what he did. They have in Michigan something we don't have, though, and that's a Republican governor who actually believes in these economic freedom issues. Our governor, Dana, you probably know this, half of his $15 million campaign war chest this last time around pretty much came from big labor. So He will fight us tooth and nail on this. He'll try to pick off House members and Senate members, even on the Republican side of the aisle, by doing Lord knows what, as he's tried to do in the past on issues like this. But I think paycheck protection is good because we can avoid the governor on that. I can do a referendum and send it directly to the people. And I'm just concluding a statewide bus tour, speakers tour. We're coming back into St. Louis this afternoon. I think the voters in Missouri would overwhelmingly approve paycheck protection because it just makes sense.
Well, and it seems that Missouri voters would support right to work as well. This is the state has been trending more and more red, and they wanted the choice when it came to Obamacare, and we're the only state that we were the first state to actually challenge it, as you know this, at the legislative level, and we did so twice, and this was well over 60% for both of these. One was like 73% for Prop C. So it seems as though it's ripe for right to work. But the problem, even though we have the veto-proof majority, we're controlling Senate and House, it's the fact that you're concerned that there are Republicans in the Senate that would actually work against it.
In the Senate and on an override, I don't think I keep all 109 members together because some of them will argue to me that they need to vote their districts on this. And that's the problem, Dana. We've got these heavy suburban and urban areas where I also need leadership from the business community. I have argued with some of the top business leaders in St. Louis and Kansas City for worker freedom, and because of the heavy union contracts they have, a lot of our business leaders need to be educated on this and be willing to stand up as well. I need that buy-in from them as well. And I hope they look at what happened in Michigan. Michigan's had a real turnaround this last decade. And I hope we start following suit. I think paycheck protection and one other issue, prevailing wage reform, which we're also going to move in the House, is a way to get to get incrementally towards that ultimate worker freedom state.
Yes, because that would, and I've shared statistics on this program before, statistics from the Commerce Department and the Department of Labor that shows, when you kick in right to work, it changes. Union bosses become much more amiable in terms of dealing with business leaders and so on and so forth. And it actually,
they sure do.
It strengthens that. We see wages and benefits increase, and then the jobs, the employment opportunities alone. And so it would seem businesses would want that if they're all about making money, right? You would think.
You're right, Dan. And, I will say this. We're going to have the discussion on right to work this year because a couple of my colleagues who I've seen as I've traveled the state have said, Tim, I understand the political pitfalls in this, but the discussion needs to be had. Do you mind if I file the bill? I said, absolutely. That legislation is the art of compromise and leverage, and I think we need to have the discussion. Let's move it forward. Let's have a right to work bill discussed. Let's have a paycheck protection bill discussed. Let's have a prevailing wage reform bill discussed. And I want the business community to wake up in our urban areas and see how bold that Lansing has been on this in Michigan, and say, look, let's have the discussion. The growth in our country per the last national census, which we studied in the redistricting year last year, has been in the South and the West, largely because they are low-tax, right-to-work states.
Right. Exactly. What are some of the districts that you think may pose a bit of an obstacle in terms of getting right to work through?
I would say the counties that would be difficult on that would be your St. Louis County, St. Louis City, obviously,
right?
St. Louis County, St. Charles County, Jefferson County has been the hotbed of union activity in our state for years because of where the Chrysler plant was. However, Dana, that's all changing though, and that's why I say I think we're moving towards worker freedom. Jefferson County was solidly Democratic when I entered the House just 6 years ago. Now we have a majority of Republicans in Jefferson County, but it's going to take a while for the policy to turn around in those counties as well. Yeah,
Jefferson County is my home county, and I remember just growing up, I went to school out there, and solid blue, big union presence. But as you said, especially after Chrysler, things are, which I had family members who worked there. It's really starting to change. I mean, there are Republicans winning seats there that honestly I would have never have expected to see. If we ever get a Republican sheriff there, I will fall over.
We're going to work on that. I'm really happy with so many Republican candidates that have won. And, on the other side of the state, of course, Jackson County and Kansas City, that we have some – see, that's the thing. We have some Republicans in some really weird areas right now where there's former Democratic strongholds. So, I'm glad the candidates are there now. Now we just have to change hearts and minds on the policies. Michigan was a political earthquake. It's being felt all across the state. People are going, oh, my, well – If Michigan, then why not here? So I think the discussion will be had, and we'll move forward on paycheck protection this year. I believe we can get that out of the House. I'll be looking to my friends in the Senate to help us get that across the finish line. Well, and I know that you have a lot of support, especially in the grassroots community for this. So we appreciate you being so solidly for, employee freedom and for being truly pro-choice. We appreciate that. That's where the true choice is. It's with freedom and opportunity. I'm hearing it across the state. And, if you look at the states where jobs are growing and where manufacturing bases remain solid and are even increasing their productivity, it's in those states like you've just talked about, the South, the West, right-to-work states. There we go. Well, we so appreciate it. Missouri House Speaker Tim Jones, thank you very much, sir, for all you do. We appreciate it. Thank you, Dana. Great to talk to you and your audience. You too. Take care.